Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Beginner Basics, where today we are going to be talking about the Artificer class, one of the more complicated classes in Dungeons & Dragons Online. However, this character is, well, I want to say complicated a little bit, but once you get the hang of it, Artificer quickly becomes the favorite of many. So let's start about talking about the Artificer by talking about the elephant in the room. This character is a rogue. And the main reason for that is what we're going to talk about later with some of the Artificer mechanics. One of the main Artificer mechanics that's very cool is that their main stat is intelligence. Artificers are like spellcasters, but they're also like engineers and mechanics. They can build and use all sorts of different types of tools, and all of that comes off of intelligence. However, for reasons I cannot explain to you right now, as of this point, Artificers aren't able to use intelligence entirely for all of their statistics, and they can either do that by getting access to a universal tree called the Harper Agent, which is not free to play, or you multiclass. And so in this case, we're going to be mixing the Artificer and the Rogue in this example, but you can play pure Artificers and still focus on that intelligence role. So for all intents and purposes, I'm going to talk about where the Rogue comes into it, but just know we're talking about Artificer right here, okay? Artificer. So Artificers, they are generally known for using the repeating crossbow. That's kind of their like weapon of choice. However, they also can make proficient spellcasters and melee characters, as well as having some cool tanking utility. So generally they have a lot of flexibility to them. Every single Artificer is going to be using intelligence for pretty much everything. Some Artificers, like the melees, might have a little bit of strength for some feat requirements, although in this Artificer you're not going to have that. Every Artificer wants some Constitution, so that way they don't die. And if you're playing a more tanky-oriented Artificer, you're going to have even more Constitution in this case. As I said, because Intelligence is your main stat, Intelligence feeds into your skills, your ability to disable traps, as well as your spell casting. So you'll notice I have spell points here. All of this comes from my Intelligence, which is very good. So that's kind of how we want to use that. As far as the skills go, because you're an intelligence-based character, you're going to have a lot of them. You're going to notice a lot of these skills actually have numbers next to them, and that's because we take basically about half of the skills in the entire game. For the most part, we're going to be talking about stuff like Disable Device, Open Lock, Search, Spot, all of your general trapping skills, but then the other associated skills are going to help you with just some general game stuff. Tumble for keeping yourself safe, use Magic Device to be able to use special scrolls and wands to be able to raise allies from the dead or heal people, which is pretty useful. Spellcraft to raise a small amount of some of the damaging effects you do that are based off of magic, and even if you're not a caster, Artificers can imbue their weapons with extra damage, so that will come up in conversation, as well as stuff like Haggle, Jump, and Balance for just general ease of use and general play. As I said, you're going to have a lot of skills when you play as the Artificer, and while there is a guide in the description that does go through all of the skills that you're going to need, you can obviously make some adjustments if you think that I took something that you don't like, or you'd like to go to some of the other skills down here, like maybe you just really want to have a high listen, I don't know. But as I said, the skills are relatively straightforward. Now, as far as the feats go, Artificers actually get a very large amount of special Artificer feats, and one of the most specific and unique things about the Artificer is the Rune Arm. So the Rune Arm is here, it's a feat you get at level 2 and allows you to equip Rune Arms. And it has two functions. Basically, Rune Arms are pieces of equipment. So in this case, I have the Flame Warden Rune Arm. And what this does is it gives me a Fire Blast. So if I equip this, it has a move on it, so it has Fire Blast. And think of this sort of like an arm cannon, basically. It's like a magic gun. You ever play Mega Man? Now, well, guess what? Now you have an arm cannon just like Mega Man. And based on the different Rune Arms that you get, you can actually change the effects. So you might have Fire Blast, but you might have Fireball. You might have Exploding Cannon Shot. You might have, and that's just within the purview of fire. There's also a Cursed Flame Rune Arm in the game, but then there's Acid Rune Arms, Force Rune Arms, Ice Rune Arms. There's loads of Rune Arms, lots of experimentation. So if you like looking for different things, there's even one that literally shoots garbage. It just shoots garbage. It's like a garbage like dumpster that's full of garbage and it shoots garbage. It's actually extremely powerful, which is very funny. But there's one that shoots bees. There's a lot of Rune Arms, very cool stuff. The way that the Rune Arms function is once I equip them, so I'm going to put this Rune Arm on. Rune Arms go in your off slot here, so they go where your shield goes. And Rune Arms can be equipped while using crossbows, even though crossbows are generally two-handed weapons. So even though I have a crossbow on, I can still equip a rune arm. I can't use a two-handed weapon and a rune arm, but I could equip a one-handed weapon and a rune arm, so I could have this dagger and I still have my rune arm as an example. Now, to use the rune arm, there actually is a keyboard control in your options menu that comes to rune arm use. So if I type in rune here, it's for which button I want to press to actually use my rune arm. So I have re-keybound mine. So if I am attacking, if I press the rune arm use button, you're going to notice I have this little reticle here. This determines the charge state of the rune arm, and when I press the button, whoosh, it has the effect. The charge that's on here, you can see the charge tier, it tells you the different effect. So charge tier 1 does damage, charge tier 2 does more damage, charge tier 3 does more damage, charge tier 4 does more damage, and charge tier 5 does more damage. So the more you charge up your rune arm, the more damage your blast is going to do, however it happens. Also, some rune arms, not this one, but some of them will have specific effects. So they will say something along the lines of, if at charge tier 3, also do X. So one of them is, as an example, a cursed flame rune arm. At a higher tier, it also applies curses because it's more powerful. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot of cool and unique rune arms. I'm not going to go over the individual rune arms too much here, because I think that rune arms are a really cool thing for artificers to be able to find. However, what I will say is that rune arms do not drop in the normal loot pool. They do not come from any normal areas, so if you are just looting chests, you won't usually find rune arms. They only come from individual quests in very specific places. So in the description, I will put a link to where you can get all of the different rune arms, so that way, if you are at a certain level or you want to leaf through them and go, oh, this one looks cool or sounds cool, you can go ahead and grab it, because maybe you want to get the Necronomicon that shoots out books. Well, you'll have to be able to figure out where that one is so you can put it on. Now, rune arms, like every other item in DDO, also grant you statistics. So each one tells you its maximum charge tier. The maximum charge tier, which is this thing here, increases as you get higher level rune arms. So low level rune arms have low maximum charge tier, higher level rune arms have higher maximum charge tier. Then they'll have stats. So this one has like fire resistance and reflex saves. And then lastly, we have the rune arm imbue. So this adds damage onto your attacks. So that way, just having a rune arm is good, even if you don't choose to blast it, because you don't have to use the button. You don't have to activate rune arms at all. You can just have it equipped and then still just get a benefit from attacking with your weapon, because it is in fact a offhand. So it just gives you stats. And then in this case, it gives me an extra 1 to 4 fire damage on all of my attacks. And that'll also apply to using a crossbow. So if I don't want to use a rune arm, I don't have to. Now, fun fact about this, you can actually do both at the same time. You can fire a rune arm while attacking or casting spells. There's no limit to what you can do with a rune arm. So as long as you're using the rune arm, you're going to be getting free damage. It doesn't interrupt anything. It actually, think of it like if you played other video games like World of Warcraft, it's off of a global cooldown. You can use it whenever you want, as long as your character's not stunned. But it does get fatiguing to constantly press this button all the time to charge the rune arm and then spend the rune arm constantly. And that's where the actual feat comes in. This feat does two things. One, it tells you how the rune arm works, which it tells you the DC of the rune arm, which is how hard it is to resist, is 10 plus your intelligence. So that's where intelligence comes in, plus the rune arm's maximum charge, which is whatever yours, and mine's a 2 in this case, plus the current charge level of the shot fired, plus your evocation bonuses, plus your rune arm bonuses, which is a lot of stuff. But basically, these are your spellcaster stats, and the more you charge the rune arm, the harder it is to resist. That's how you're going to use your rune arm. Every rune arm's damage, not only does the damage here, but it also scales with the relevant spell power. So Fire Blast uses fire spell power, so you need to make sure you have that for the item. A lot of the low-level rune arms won't have this, but they've got better at the design. Almost every rune arm in the game will give you the relevant spell power for the rune arm. So for example, if you're higher level, I talked about that curse rune arm like 10 times now. If you get that one, it gives you fire spell power to work with your fire blast in case you don't have another item for that. Now this rune arm use does one other thing, which is that if you actually take it out and put it on your action bar and then toggle it, now your character is just going to auto charge the rune arm. So you just press the button to empty the charge out and you don't have to worry about it. You just press the button and then boom, the charge goes away and you are all set. You never actually have to worry about charging it yourself. You just press it whenever it comes off of cooldown. However, something that's also important to note about the rune arm, you hear those little blasts, these little charging noises. They're good. I like them. Not everybody does. So if you don't like them, you can just go in here, go into Rune, here audio, and you can disable your rune arm sounds. So if you don't like hearing all of the constant charging, you could just kind of ignore this and then just press it when you can see it, because again, it's in the middle of your screen. And then whenever you want to get rid of it, you can just turn it off, and then it should be gone there. So overall, rune arms are a core part of Artificer, but I honestly don't think that it's something that you need to micromanage too much. If you don't like rune arms, you never have to engage with them. And if you think they're cool, then start to learn about them and use them. Just make sure you have one equipped, because they, again, as I said, they give you free stats and free damage for your main hand weapon. So it is something that you do want to use. However, going back to the rest of the feats, Artificers get Artificer Knowledge, so their potions, wands, and scrolls actually cast at a higher level. They also get the ability to inscribe scrolls into their spellbook. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And they get an Iron Defender pet. This Iron Defender boy right here. You get him at level 1, and you can summon your pet. And your pet's level and stats will scale with your Artificer level. So because I'm multi-classed here, my pet is lower level. It is not the full level as it would be as if I was a pure Artificer. However, you get little pet message here, little pet thing, and then you can equip your pet with a docent if you happen to have a docent. So I have one in my inventory because I started the character, and now it gives him some armor, except he's not high enough level because this is level 7, which is really funny. But you can also get a collar here as well. So you can equip a collar to your companion to increase their damage, which of course I can't do because it's not high enough level. You can also rename your pet. The Artificer pet is pretty bad. The only thing that it will do is sometimes it will knock down enemies with this trip attack. Other than that, it's going to stand there and maybe take a beating. In general, when you're using the Artificer pet, you're going to find it's going to die quite often, so I can't recommend using it all of the time, but it is cool. And if you're at the beginning, and especially doing some of the lower difficulties, it will definitely put in a lot of work and be helping you out. As we continue down the feat line, in general, most of the feats you're going to be taking are ranged combat feats because you're a ranged character. Artificers get the rapid reload feat for free, which lets them reload their crossbows faster. However, you're going to be taking all of the relevant ranged feats. So stuff like point blank shot, which gives you more damage when you're in close range, as well as precise shot, which means if you target an enemy, so you actually like highlight them either with the tab target function or by just clicking on them, you actually make it so you always hit that target. So it just goes through. You don't have to worry about like hitting other enemies in the way, as well as giving you a buff here called Archer's Focus. Archer's Focus is really nice because it makes it so when you stand still and you shoot enemies, you get more range damage, which is pretty good. However, Artificers are actually spellcasters all the same. And so they will be in the future taking something called a metamagic feat. Metamagic feats are basically these feats that apply to your spells that make them cost more but change the effects of them. Most importantly, the metamagic feats allow you to increase the power of your healing, because Artificers do get the ability to heal, and you'll be able to use this to keep yourself fully sustained the entire time while you're leveling, which is very, very good. And we'll talk about this when we talk about healing in a little bit. One of the last feats I want to talk about is a defensive feat called Insightful Reflexes. Your character, because you're part rogue, actually gets an ability called Evasion, which makes it so that when you get hit by any type of trap, I don't know where Evasion is, it's not under rogue class feats. Oh, it's under defensive feats. When you get hit by a trap or some type of area of effect attack, you can make a reflex save to take no damage. However, your intelligence is going to quickly outscale your dexterity, especially once you get items in some higher levels. And so having your intelligence scale into your reflex saves instead of your dexterity is great, which is why we end up taking the feat Insightful Reflexes to allow that to happen. Now, as I mentioned, Artificers are spellcasters, so you do get quite a lot of Artificer spells. They get the repair spells, which allow you to repair your little buddy here, but you can't repair yourself, unfortunately. Now, you can if you're a Warforged, and there's also actually Artificer feats to turn yourself into a machine. I don't recommend them for this type of character, but that is a way you can play the Artificer. Instead, you also get these admixture spells, where if you have an admixture spell, you can go ahead and target yourself, and then when you cast the spell, you basically throw a potion on the ground and heal yourself. Although, oddly enough, I'm in town, I'm at full health, I don't actually have to worry about getting that back. You also get Conjure Bolts, so that way you can just summon bolts. You never actually have to like buy them at a store. You can just summon them and then keep firing forever. It's extremely convenient. Then you also get these personal augmentations. This allows you to use your intelligence to hit with your damage. Usually the damage and stats of a weapon scale off of your strength or dexterity, but crossbows are unique. Crossbows actually use their dexterity for their attack modifier, how well you can aim the crossbow. So this lets you use your intelligence instead to make it so that you hit enemies more often based on your intelligence. And crossbows actually don't add any stat to their damage, which makes sense. The crossbow, like if I swing a sword harder, it's going to do more damage. I can't like push my crossbow harder to do more damage, so the damage isn't affected by any of your stats. However, out of rogue, we will get the ability to get intelligence to damage as well, allowing you to use your intelligence fully for all of the relevant stats here. Now, as far as how the spells actually work, if you want to play as a spellcaster, I recommend quickly doing a browse over of possibly either the sorcerer or wizard videos to get a bit better understanding about how all of the spells work. But I'm going to give you the quick and dirty. Basically, all of your spells will cost spell points. They will tell you they're just in the description here how much they cost and what the effect of the spells are. If you don't know what to take, I will give you a recommended list of all of the spells I think you should take, and that will be in the build guide attached to this video. And as you can see here, it'll tell you the information, what the spell does. This is Curative Admixture, Cure Light Wounds. It tells you it throws an explosive potion bottle that deals 1d6 plus 2 positive energy. That's healing, so it will heal you and your friends, as well as damaging any undead. Versus something like this, Enchant Weapons, which costs 5 spell points, and it says it's a buff that gives you +1 to your enhancement bonus, which is basically an extra plus to your hit and your damage. So Artificers will, for the most part, especially with this character, you cast a bunch of buff spells at the beginning of an adventure to like get more armor, increase the damage of your weapons, and then you just run through an adventure blasting people and not really thinking too much about anything else. And again, you'll have some supportive spells for other people. The relevant things you might want to know about if you're playing as a caster Artificer is that there's the save up here. So it says save 17. That determines how difficult it is for a monster to actually resist your spells. So you want to increase that number. The save is based off of the level of the spell. So it's level 1. So the save is based off of that, as well as your intelligence, and then any bonuses to the school. So the school here says conjuration. So that way, if you want to try to damage people with this, like undead, you want to have conjuration on your items and on your spell focuses. Artificers are evocation casters almost exclusively for their damage spells. You do learn a lot of lightning damage spells as an artificer, and you can play a spellcaster damage artificer if you wish. I don't have one. Do I have one linked? I do have a spellcaster artificer linked in the description, or for the in the beginner basics artificer there. So if you do want to check that, you can. But other than that, we're going to be moving on, as these spells aren't terribly relevant for a regular artificer other than just buffing. All right, so now let's break down the fundamentals of trapping. So sometimes when you go on your journeys in your adventure, you might come across a trap. So I'm going to show you how to disable and deal with those traps. When you walk forward during your adventures, sometimes you're going to get a little notification. It pops up above your head as a symbol, as well as information here telling you think there's a trap nearby. Getting this information is based on your spot skill. Your spot alerts you to danger before it happens. So maintaining your spot is pretty good. Unfortunately, we don't keep a lot of wisdom here, but this build does account for that by giving you a lot of additional spot in other ways. That way you can find traps ahead of time. Then, once I know there's a trap somewhere in here, I need to search for it. That's where the search button comes in. Search, which is based off of intelligence, allows you to actually find the traps as well as the ways to disable them. So I'm going to press search right now. Now that I've searched, it's got a line that tells me where the actual trap box is, and then all of a sudden I can see it's here. As I move towards the trap box, oh no, I'm being told there's another trap. What's happening? I'm going to search for it. And it turns out that's actually just the head of the trap. This is a cold trap, so if I walked in front of this area, the trap would go off and do a bunch of damage to me. So instead, we can just disable it safely from this side before anything happens. Bear in mind, sometimes you will find traps that are not really connected. So you might have the trap head might be way over here, but the box is here. So always be mindful for that sort of thing. Then once we go to disable the trap, all I do is click it. A disable device happens. The game makes a disable device roll. So it added my plus 24. I rolled a 15 and I disabled the trap lickety split. Your disable a device will be using thieves tools. So whenever you try to disable the device or open a lock, it'll be using your thieves tools to do so. Thieves tools are something that you start with, but you can also get more and higher levels as you go. You can get up to +5 thieves tools in the game. There's also some vendors you can buy thieves tools from, but as you go through your adventure, you should for the most part have no issues with your thieves tools. Then when I want to open this door, unfortunately this door is also locked and I can't get through. And that is where the open lock skill comes in. I just press the open lock skill, it starts opening the lock, and I rolled a 1 and I succeeded, because with skill checks, even if you roll a 1, that's a-okay. And now I can open the door, I know the trap is safe, and my dog is running around to kill people. So, something I also wanted to mention here is that in this game, oftentimes the traps can be quite difficult for you to be able to manage and deal with. It's important to make sure you have items that increase your skills as you go. So for example, you may find an item like this, like the troubleshooter's goggles that you get from Korthos Island that give you increases to your search, spot, and listen, but as well as having the troubleshooter set that gives you bonuses to your open lock and disable device. So you want to find items that are giving you bonuses to your skills, as it can be quite helpful for you to have these extra skill bonuses to keep your stats high enough so you can disable every trap you come across. But even still, sometimes they might be a little bit of an extra challenge. And that's one of the reasons why I include a stat called Skill Boost here. This is an action boost. Action boosts are basically little buffs you can give yourself for a short duration. This one, in particular, gives +2 action boost bonus to all skills. So if I know there's a trap somewhere, but I can't find it, I can press this button to boost up my skills temporarily and then search. That way I can actually disable the trap. Similarly, that's what a lot of people will do. Some people will wear their trapping gear all of the time, but other people will just have it in their inventory, and then when a trap comes up, they put on all their gear, they search the trap, they disable stuff, they put all their combat gear back on. That way you can save yourself some spaces. So again, that's the general gist of traps and how you get rid of them. All right, now let's talk about your enhancement tree for the Artificer. Now this character, as I mentioned before, is going to be a crossbow type Artificer, so we're mainly going to be using the Battle Engineer tree. However, Battle Engineer has a second flexible option, as Battle Engineers can also be played with Hammer and Morning Stars, so Warhammers, Light Hammers, and Morning Stars, or with Hand and a Half weapons, which are Bastard Swords and Dwarven War Axes. Hand and a Half weapons are a type of weapon that are wielded in one hand, so you can have your Rune Arm, but also they strike through as if they were a two-handed weapon and letting you hit multiple targets at the same time. In this case, we are going to be going with crossbows. Now this tree is all about repeating crossbow, giving huge bonuses to repeating crossbows up the side of the tree here. Additionally, you get bonuses to your trapping skills, which is pretty nice, and we get a bunch of special attacks. Attacks like Caustic Shot, which adds a bunch of extra acid and rust damage on our shots. So if you see a construct, you can go boom, 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 press Caustic Shot, and it does a huge amount of additional damage. Or more importantly, Shatter Defenses. This skill is one of the best buttons you're going to be able to get. It is extremely powerful. In the future, you will actually max this out, but right now I only have a few points right at the beginning. You want to rush this as fast as you can. You want to get this as soon as you can, because this is an area of effect skill. It makes it so that when you fire your crossbow, you shoot 3 shots that explode, dealing damage to all enemies nearby. So when you get surrounded by kobolds, you can use Shatter Defenses to immediately obliterate the huge pack of them, which is very handy. And I promise you, that won't get boring the further you get into the game. The Battle Engineer also features a focus on Rune Arms, allowing you to charge your Rune Arms even faster. So if you like using your Rune Arms, you can get access to that as well. The cores feature like buffs to your weapons and armor, where you're basically passively infusing your armor and infusing your weapons with more and more buffs as you increase in level. You also get a imbue called the Thundershock Imbue, which adds electrical damage to all of your attacks, which is really, really cool. You get an ability here called Endless Fusillade, where your crossbow reloads itself with magic. So instead of just like firing and going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and you have to reload in between, you become a machine gun, gunning everything down, and it is very, very, very powerful. Good power fantasy. All the way at the top here, some of the big reasons why we want to take this tree is Thunder Shock weapons. This is another area of effect attack, except this attack is a knockdown. So not only is it an area of effect attack, it also knocks down the enemies you hit, which is just even better than having an area of effect attack, because now they're just sitting there waiting for you to just blast them again. So it's very, very convenient, which you can use at a range. Additionally, you get the weapon attachment, where you can actually like basically weld the weapon into your arm, which then gives you extra bonuses and damage with your weapons. Bonuses while using Rune Arms, and you also get tactical mobility, giving you extra movement speed while you have a Rune Arm, which is pretty cool. The mechanic tree is a rogue tree, and we use this specifically for this enhancement right here, targeting sights. You can now use your intelligence modifier for damage with all crossbows and thrown weapons. Now this takes a little while for you to actually get, as you won't actually get this ability until you are level 9. So until then, that's where you want to have a Rune Arm to add some extra damage to your attacks, your Thunder Shock Imbue, stuff like the Caustic Shot and the Shatter Defenses, just to gain some damage along the way until you finally get this and you get a pretty big damage bump. In the tree, you're also taking bonuses to your mechanics as well as your awareness. So this is like all of your skills. And of course, as I mentioned before, this skill boost, just to make it so your character is able to deal with a lot of the dangerous traps and stuff that come with the territory of being a Artificer in this case. Then Renegade Mastermaker is pretty good here. This is the Artificer tank tree. Renegade Mastermaker is very specifically about keeping yourself alive. It has a bunch of melee abilities like Mighty Slam and Melee Stun, Kinetic Discharge, which is like a melee cleave attack, which does a bunch of force damage. So very heavy focus on melee here, but also it gives you a bunch of just regular defenses. All of the cores at the bottom give a bunch of hit points, as well as some bonus spell power, some bonus defenses. You get some spell-like abilities that allow you to heal yourself very easily. And this is where when I've talked about before, some of the meta magic feats like the Maximize come in. These things you're pretty much never going to touch until you get like this, where you can turn Maximize on here and basically have a button that heals you and all your friends to full in one single click, which is pretty convenient. So you just pick up a bunch of defenses here. I wish I could give you more information about Renegade Mastermaker, but most of it's pretty self-explanatory. It's like, this gives you defense, and this gives you defense, and this gives you more armor, and this gives you even more armor, and this gives you more health. So it's very, very much defense. Good tree, just not terribly exciting. Now, to go into the last Artificer tree, the one we're not actually using here, that's the Arcano Technician. This one is what the Artificer is all about when it comes to spell casting. And if you're playing as an Arcano Technician, this would be your main tree if you want to be a spellcaster. Arcano Technicians basically get a bunch of spell-like abilities, and so this is where you would use your meta magic feats much sooner, so you can start blasting enemies for huge amounts of damage. They also get bonuses to spell critical strike chance with the Artificer spells electric, fire, and force damage. They get to reduce the cost of their meta magic feats, which is nice, but then they also get abilities like the ability to imbue their Iron Defender to make the Iron Defender more powerful. Because they're a technician, they can actually make the dog better, but in doing so also builds up your own power, giving you some more spell damage. They also get special bonuses with Rune Arms, and they get one of the coolest effects in the entire game up here with Charged Recoil, where if you shoot an enemy with the Rune Arm, regardless of what damage type it does, it strips away their vulnerability or their immunities to electrical damage. So demons, for example, don't take any damage from electricity, but with a Rune Arm shot, well placed, you blast them, and all of a sudden, they're now taking full damage from electric damage, which is very cool, since Artificers do a whole bunch of that. So that's what you get out of Arcano Technician. And then lastly, the last tree we're going to be using in this build in particular is the Assassin tree. You are not an assassin, you're an artificer and you're building stuff and doing what you can. However, these abilities here, Venom Blades and Toxic Affinity, gives you what's called bonus imbue dice, which is going to increase the power of your Thunder Shock imbue, basically giving you even more electrical damage per hit, and for a really low investment, you get a really high amount of damage, so it's definitely pretty good for this character. Now, like every good adventure, you might have some equipment you need for your journey, so let me show you where you can get some of that. First, we're going to head into the marketplace, as the marketplace, which you can get to just off of the north section of the harbor, will get you access to many different vendors, which you can find right here in the center. The marketplace itself holds lots of entry-level potion vendors, which is very cool. So I can talk to this guy and grab myself some extra potions if I need some more stats. Say, for example, if I want to increase my intelligence, I can grab a potion of Fox's Cunning to increase my intelligence if I don't have any equipment that does that yet, because this won't stack with an item, but also for just general curatives, grabbing like disease removal potions, curse removal potions, cure moderate potions, things like that, ways to increase my character's survivalness, if you will. On top of that, there's also the wand vendor, and wand vendors are pretty nice because you can get wands allowing you to heal your allies. Now, as an artificer, you do get the ability to cast spells. So you can cast the Curative Admixture Cure Light Wounds, which is nice. However, as I said, you can also grab the Cure Water Wounds wands here, and you have a UMD chance to be able to activate it. So you can pick up some wands and heal your allies. The only relevant wand I think you want to think about is the Shield Wand, as this will protect you from magic missiles, as well as giving you some more armor class. So again, this can be quite nice, but it just depends on exactly what it is you need. Now, as I previously mentioned, artificers get spells, but they don't get all of the spells. You learn spells as you go, and you actually have to learn them. So how do you do that? First, you need to talk to an arcane reagent vendor and buy yourself some of these arcane reagent spell inscription materials. You're gonna need spell inscription materials for every single level you decide to do Artificer. So if you want to learn a level 1 spell, you need to have a level 1 Artificer spell material here. Same thing with 2 and 3. Now, knowing what spells actually are at Artificer level 1 and 2 is a little bit complicated because Artificers get spells at different levels than regular characters. As an example, my Artificer has Resist Energy as a level 1 spell, But this is actually a level 2 wizard spell, so you have to know what spells you need for each character. So I'll have a link in the description for all of the Artificer scrolls, so that way you can just kind of use that as a baseline to know which spells are where. However, there's one slightly easier way to do this. If you head into House Caneth, which is off of the east side of the marketplace, there actually is an Artificer spell vendor or scroll vendor. I will sell you a lot of specific Artificer scrolls. House Caneth, of course, being the place where all the Artificers build all the cool nonsense. So you just come down here and you will find the Artificer scroll vendor. Now, the Artificer scroll vendor, unfortunately doesn't have every single Artificer scroll. They have a lot of them, but they are still missing quite a few, so you will have to go through to the different various scroll vendors throughout Stormreach to grab every single scroll, but learning all of these can be quite good. You can also do this before you actually learn spells of that level. So for example, Stone Skin is a level, it says Artificer 6, so that means it's a 3rd level Artificer spell, because Artificers get 3rd level spells at level 6. So I can actually learn this now, and then when I level up, I don't have to worry about taking this because I've already learned it. So you can use that as one opportunity. However, actually, did they do this? Talk to the vendor. Didn't notice it. No, for reasons I don't know, they actually don't have the materials that you want for actually learning all this stuff. So if you want to actually learn the scrolls, you have to buy the scrolls here, and then you have to go to another place to actually use the scrolls, which again, I don't know what the deal is with that. I'm not sure what the point is, but it is what it is. So you gotta buy the scrolls and hoof it around town to learn everything. Unfortunately, unlike wizards and sorcerers, well, not wizards and sorcerers, specifically wizards, who have just these dedicated vendors where it's like, here's level 2, buy them all. Here's level 1, buy them all. Artificers, you kind of have to futz about and find all the scroll vendors all over town and then buy the scrolls and then go, oh, this is actually a 3. Okay, I need to go get 3, and you got to talk to this guy and you got to buy all the things. It can be quite tedious and annoying, but it's just a part of playing Artificer. All right, so let's talk about some Artificer tips and tricks. One of the things I want you to do first is go into gameplay and enable experimental tumble controls. This will allow you to tumble in and out of combat, which you can denote here by these little bubbles. These are what these bubbles are for. The bubbles indicate how many tumble charges your character has, because when you tumble, your character actually gains a huge amount of defense. If I mouse over my armor class here, I can see my armor class is 21, which means monsters, it says I have like a 34% chance of missing me. Not very good. I also have a 1% dodge chance. Dodge is a separate stat. If I actually tumble, my dodge goes up to 95%. You can treat dodging in this game or tumbling like a dodge roll from like Dark Souls or something. So it's quite good for keeping yourself alive in combat. When you get surrounded by enemies, you can tumble backwards and take less damage, as well as getting some good distance. However, you might have noticed my reflex saves also go up. During a tumble, you can actually add your tumble score to your reflex save. So that way, if there's a trap, you can tumble through it and take 0 damage. So something I highly recommend. Next, make sure that after you take your attacks, Caustic Shot and Shatter Defenses, you actually put them on your action bar. Same thing with Thunder Shock and View, you actually put it on and then turn it on. You don't have to do anything, you just gotta turn on this one, but the other attacks you actually wanna make sure you're actively using. Then, as I said, Artificer is mostly just buff, so I cast a buff spell and then I wait for my enemies to come to me. One pro tip I can give to you is let your enemies group up before immediately using Shatter Defenses, so that way you can get them with that kind of AoE attack, as Shatter Defenses is great, but it has like a 10-second cooldown, so you can't always use it exactly when you want to. As I mentioned before, there's like traps, so I know that there's a trap here, the game is telling me there is a trap here. However, as I said before, one of the benefits of having the access to the tumble is when I save, I get to add a huge amount to my reflex save, so I actually take very little, almost, well, actually no damage from that trap. And one of the benefits of Artificer is that they get like just a lot of range attacks, so you want to make sure you are just constantly blasting away. You don't have to worry about your ammo in any capacity. Some other characters might have to worry about their ammunition, but not you. As your character, you can just keep shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting until the cows come home. So don't ever worry about actually running out of ammo. If you do, you can just throw on some Conjure Bolts and then just keep shooting. Honestly, I wish I had a lot of pros and tips to give you, but most of the stuff is pretty straightforward. Shoot the bad guys, deal damage to people, click your buttons that are on your action bar. You're gonna have to walk backwards a lot, so get used to kind of walking backwards in combat, because you do end up doing that pretty often, as even though there are kobolds and stuff around you, all these guys, as I said, you're gonna want to make sure you don't get fully surrounded. So, you know, kind of let them group together a little bit so that I can fire like my big AoE buff or AoE attack. Use your Rune Arm whenever is relevant. Remember, you can use your Rune Arm while moving. You can use your Rune Arm while shooting. There's no downside to using the Rune Arm at any point while you're playing. So if you just see an opportunity to use it, it's just free damage at that point. As long as you will, it's free damage as long as your character, or your human body, I don't say your character, as long as your human body is capable of clicking the button at the same time as you're doing other stuff, there's really no downside. One of the unfortunate parts about playing as an Artificer is that getting boxes is really, really annoying. I literally have a like crossbow bolt stuck in the box and yet it's not breaking. I hate breaking boxes as an Artificer, so most of the time I don't. However, I believe at the Artificer trainer, you can actually talk to them and say, hey, can you train my dog to like attack boxes? And then your dog will. So other than that, you are pretty good. Now, as a reminder, even though, you know, you can use all your, you can heal yourself with these healing items, you want to make sure you have some healing spell power items to increase the power of your healing spells. If you ever want to get your spell points back, you do just want to make sure you're actually using a rest shrine that will give you all of your spell points back that you're missing during your adventure. All right, now let's talk about equipment when it comes to Artificers and what you should be looking for. So as I mentioned before, your character, you're going to want to grab things that max out your intelligence. Intelligence is your most important stat. You also want things that give you extra constitutions. That's in terms of like your belts, your rings, and what have you. You want to look for those types of things. You don't really need spell points. Spell points aren't terribly important. Hit points are much more important, so if you see an item that gives you hit points or spell points, pick the hit point one. It's going to be better for you. Also, for your spell powers, you only want 2 of them on this character. Positive, because that's your healing, so if you ever find anything that has positive spell power on it, you want to make sure you have at least 1 of those equipped. And then electric spell power also increases the extra damage that you get to add from your Thundershock weapons imbue. Now, another thing that's important about Artificer is actually attacking monsters, so you want to make sure you get yourself a good crossbow. This character is designed to use repeating crossbows. Light or heavy, it doesn't really matter, but just make sure you're using a repeating crossbow. You will find a lot of repeating crossbows during the level process, so I can't really, you know, it shouldn't be too bad as you're running around and looking for stuff. Just make sure you have a repeating crossbow. And then you want to make sure you have the relevant stats for your character. In this case, that would be things with accuracy to increase your attack bonus, items with deadly to increase your damage, and then some of the extra stats you can find are like Seeker for increasing your critical damage or Deception for your sneak attack damage. If you're within 30 feet of a target, you're allowed to sneak attack it, even though you're a crossbow user, so that can be quite good for you. Additionally, you might find some gear that increases your double shot chance. Double shot just makes it so you shoot an extra bolt whenever you shoot out, which is really nice. That can help your character. So make sure you're keeping an eye out for those sorts of things. Anything that increases your saves is also nice, or your physical and magical resistance rating is good. As far as armor goes with this character, you are a light armor user, so you want to make sure you're using light armor. Artificers can wear medium armor, but because you get evasion from rogue and evasion only works in light armor, it's much better to use light armor on this character, as the amount of extra defensive layers you get from your reflex saves is really, really nice. So light armor, crossbow, rune arm, bunch of stuff, get the stats. Alright, so I'm going to walk you through the written guide for the Artificer here. So we start levels 1, 2, 3 with Artificer, then we take 6 Rogue, and then we finish out Artificer. Again, I know it might seem weird. It's the only way we can get our intelligence to apply both to our hit chance and our damage, so you kind of have to do it this way, and it is the best way to do it. If you do own the Harper Agent tree, you can just skip all of the Rogue and just go straight Artificer, and you use Harper Agent to get the intelligence to hit and damage, which is really, really good and better, but Harper Agent isn't free, so you may not own the Harper Agent. As far as your base stats, we do play as a Drow. Drow is pretty relevant for this character because your character does use dexterity and intelligence, and it's really, really nice. You don't have to play one, but you do need to have a minimum dexterity of 13 and as much intelligence as possible. So if you decide to change race, just keep that in mind. We start with a 10 strength, 14 dex, 10 con, 20 intelligence, 8 wisdom, and 12 charisma, putting all of our level ups into intelligence. As far as your skills go, we take some skills while Artificer, some skills while Rogue, and kind of balance it back and forth. But generally, concentration, prepare, spellcraft, disable, open, lock, search, spot, use magic device, haggle, balance, jump, swim, tumble. Again, overall, it's pretty straightforward stuff. The reason why you split it up like this is that way you're not wasting any skill points, taking cross-class skills or something. Like, jump is not an Artificer skill, so you're saving your time to put jump when you're a rogue, which is a cross-class skill, same thing. Spellcraft is not a rogue skill, so you just kind of move it around for when it's relevant. As far as your feats actually go, this character takes all of the ranged feats, so we grab point blank shot and precise shot, as well as improved critical range, which is relevant, and then you move on to shot on the run later to get some extra range power. And then we actually go ahead and grab a lot of the meta magic feats here, so stuff like maximize, quicken spell to increase the power of those spells. Then in the epics, we grab pretty much all of the regular ranged feats, just picking up damage, and that's pretty much it. These are the spells that I recommend you use and the order in which I recommend you take them because of how useful they are. Although, again, stuff like Conjure Bolts, what you can do if you want, if you don't have a lot of spell slots, you can actually slot in Conjure Bolts, cast the spell a bunch of times to get the bolts, and then just take the spell off, which is kind of cool. So some people will also do stuff like that. But again, you're pretty much taking exclusively buff and healing spells, so don't stress about it too much. As far as the enhancements go, as I said, we are using mostly Battle Engineer with some Renegade Mastermaker, Mechanic, Assassin, and a little bit of Drow mixed in, although Drow is not nearly as relevant as some of the other stuff, so if you don't want to play a Drow, don't worry about this one. And then, of course, we actually have the leveling guide here. These are all the abilities I recommend you take. So we go Battle Engineer until we get access to the crossbow shot. It's called Crossbow 1 here, but in the actual written guide, I fixed it. This is a bug. But until we get the Shatter Defenses shot and the Thunder Shock Imbue, then you take the Mechanic just until you can get in, and the Assassin until you can get some of the high damage and the intelligence to hit and damage. And then we go back, finish up Battle Engineer, finish up Renegade Mastermaker, and then when you're at 20, I just do a quick respec to kind of change around how some of the points go, just to make it a little bit easier to kind of take all the stuff that you want. As far as Epic Destinies go, this one's pretty straightforward. You're going to go Shradi Champion. It's the default range tree. It's got the best range stuff in the entire game. It is really, 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 really good. So we go Shradi Champion. However, Fatesinger also has an ability called Pluck a String and Air of Discord. Pluck a String does an infinity amount of damage. So you want to grab this because of how powerful it is. Some characters will take an AoE attack, but because you have two of them in Thundershock weapons and Shatter Defenses, you can use a third, but Pluck a String does so much single target damage, it's just something you're going to take. So you grab Fatesinger for the damage and Shradi Champion for all the insane range stats. And then Shadow Dancer, again, is going to be maxing out some of your trapping skills, as well as just giving you a lot of extra stats. Sneak attack damage, which is really, really powerful, as well as some extra double shot, double strike, and the ability to ignore enemies' fortifications, so that way you can critically hit them even if they should normally be immune. So that's it. That's everything you really need to know about how to get started and how to play around with Artificer. Like I said, if you want to try a spellcaster type Artificer, then there is a link in the description for both this build guide, which was here for you, as well as the spellcaster, which is linked with the Artificer section. And Melee Artificer is quite fun. In the past, I've played a lot of Melee Artificers, and I've actually decided that for the year that this is coming out, the Beginner Basics is coming out, I'll be putting out a video series on a solo guided playthrough as a Melee Artificer to show people how to get through the entire game. So I'll have that coming in the future, as well as a full Melee Artificer build guide as well for those that want to get into it. So again, Artificer, really cool class. You're gonna have a lot of options, and I definitely recommend everybody give it a try. Artificer is one of the most popular classes for high difficulty content. For example, DDO has done certain types of hardcore events where you only have one life and you have to get through different types of challenges, and Artificer finds itself being extremely powerful, being both ranged, having ability to deal with traps, and having a tank tree. Turns out that combination is a winning combination for actually staying alive in really tough content. Anyways, that's all I have for today. So thank you for watching. I hope you had a good time. And again, if you need any other builds, please check the description. You'll find the link to the playlist with all the rest of the Beginner Basics you can check out right there in case that's interesting to you. Thank you for watching and have a good day. Bye-bye.